turn the time over to Rob and let you get on your way.
Thanks, Scott. So thanks again to the Keller Center. Without them and their support, we couldn't do awesome things like this and bring in amazing speakers like Aaron. So we're really happy to have a quick note about format. So we're going to talk for about 45 minutes. It's going to be a facilitated discussion by me with Aaron. And then we will actually open up for the last 15 minutes for Q&A from the audience. So I'll remind you of this when it gets a little bit closer, but you can step up to the mics at both sides of the front if you want to ask a question. So Aaron, thanks again for joining us.
Well, heck yeah, thanks for having me.
So, hello. So I read something that was pretty interesting about how you got started, and I heard that the first brisket that you made you thought was terrible. So
I don't think I was the only one that thought that.
So what I'm curious about is taking back to when you started and talk a little bit about how you got started in barbecue.
Well, so pretty much, gosh, I guess it was about 14 or 15 years ago. I'd gone to Academy and bought this little $99 offset cooker, no big deal, just, my then girlfriend, now wife. They had just gotten our first place together. I was like, hey, let's go buy a grill, woo! And, so I picked this thing up and called up my dad, I bought a brisket at HEB. It was like 99 cents a pound, super duper cheap. In hindsight, I probably should have bought that one. I could have gotten something nicer. Anyway, so I called up my dad and was like, hey, I got this brisket. What do I do with it? He's like, oh, I don't know. Well, that's weird. And I'll tell you why that's weird, because my family ran a barbecue joint when I was a kid. So I was like, well, thanks a lot. So anyway, I got on the old dial-up internet and asked this fella named Jeeves how to cook a brisket, and he didn't really have any answers. So I, from pretty much that point on, I was like, well, I'm just going to build a fire and see what happens. And I did. And it turns out it was really fun. I had a great time, and it was kind of nostalgic. I spent a good part of my childhood kind of poking at the fire at my parents' barbecue place that was down in Bryan, Texas. It's no longer there. And they got wise and sold it real quick. So it was kind of fun. And then, so I cooked it. Next night, had some friends over, like any other good Texan would, and we ate the brisket, reheated it, of course. And it wasn't very good.
Wasn't very good at all.
But I was hooked.
So what then happened then? So you had one initial failure, I guess, and then...
Well, I wouldn't really call it a failure necessarily. The food itself was terrible, but I was kind of like, wow, I had so much fun. This was super neat, because, just by default, I like to tinker with things. I like to build stuff. I like to, at that point, I did carpentry. I built custom vans. I played rock and roll. I still do, sort of. So I like to do stuff with my hands anyway. So barbecue just and I enjoyed cooking already. So that was kind of everything lumped into one type of cuisine. And it was just so that kind of lit the fire, so to speak.
So then you just kept making briskets and just kind of evolved.
So at that point, we started having these backyard barbecues, because I spent a lot of time at the rock clubs playing the music. So, I'd be playing a show, so we'd be like, hey, next Sunday, third Sunday of this month, or, whatever, start inviting people. So we kind of ended up doing these pretty sizable backyard barbecues, and that went on for probably, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, 6 years or so. And or less. My timeline's a little weird. So we started having barbecues, and I got a better cooker, and made 2 briskets, and made 3, and then see how many people we could feed and how much better I could get at it. And then it just kind of became sort of a mission at that point. It's like, man, we're gonna have like the most badass barbecues ever. Cool. And it just ended up being a lot of fun. And then by the end of it, I think a lot of people were kind of like, man, it'd be cool if you opened up a place. And of course, I had been thinking that the whole time. It was like, well, when we were doing our backyard barbecues, I was just kind of pretending and kind of doing little dry runs of if this was a restaurant, how would this work? How would this work? And kind of piecing stuff together in my head. And towards the end of that, we ended up having backyard barbecues. I think the last one was like 130 something people, and that was the first time that there was an actual line. And at that point, we just rented houses then, and we were actually starting to rent houses with big enough backyards to actually facilitate a huge barbecue. And I'm like, oh, this house is terrible. It's like, yeah, but it's all about the backyard. It's all about the backyard. But yeah, so the backyard barbecues were starting to get pretty cuckoo. And eventually, we kind of just bought a trailer. My wife found a trailer on Craigslist for $300. And it lived in our backyard for a while while I sort of worked on it. And then one night I was helping a friend replace a window in a place off of I-35 in an old Texaco station from the late 40s. And he was opening up a coffee roaster place there. And it's like, hey, man, you should fix up that trailer parking back here. Sell some barbecue. I'm like, huh, all right, cool. And that was all it took. It was like, a friend would be like, hey, just park it back there. Don't worry about rent until you start making money. Done. And I don't think I slept for 3 days. I was so excited. But, you know, because I'd been piecing all this stuff together. It's like I had a warmer, I had the trailer, I had, you know, really kind of been, my wife likes to call it hoarding, but I like to call it stockpiling. But yeah, so it took about a year to build the trailer, did it in our backyard, and we opened up a barbecue joint at 3421 North I-35, behind a chain link fence with razor wire, with no sign, between Dreamers and Chicos Bonitos. So it was a real family place. You know? I'm glad you didn't charge rent. Actually, we paid rent, but you know.
So my next question was going to be, was that scary for you to go out on your own? But it sounds like that was something that you really relished. So was that something from when you were younger, or even when you were doing the whole rocker thing, you eventually saw yourself starting a business? Or was this just something that just was an opportunity that you turned into it?
You know, I've looked back a whole bunch and tried to think about it. Like, man, how did we get here? Like, as much as you kind of want to be like, oh, we did this thing and we got lucky and then this happened and then we were here and then this happened and cool, that's neat. But, I mean, really, I think I kind of didn't ever think about it, but I always knew that we were going to do something. I just didn't know what. I was like, man, things are going to be fine. You know, we'll open up something one day. And I also grew up in two family businesses. So it's, you know, my grandparents owned a record store. They turned into a guitar shop later, and then my parents had a restaurant. So, I don't know, it just seemed like a pretty organic path.
And so it's interesting because one of the most important decisions that it seems like you've made is kind of keeping that one location then once you move into brick and mortar.
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about that. Is there a power of exclusivity that you're going after, or is it just a supply and demand thing? Why is
there are a few factors. So first off, I don't ever want to feel like a sellout. And be like, oh man, we sold this thing to Applebee's. And maybe if they offer to buy it, actually, I think they're not doing so good these days. They're probably, Applebee's is not the path. But I've been saying that for a while, but it just dawned on me. I was like, not Applebee's actually. So maybe Chili's. No, I mean, I wouldn't. It would really hurt our hearts if we were at the grocery store one day and be like, yeah, it's that Franklin guy. That place used to be cool. Jerk. Like, no, that's not cool. We've worked so hard for this thing, and we opened up a trailer for less than $12,000. Cash flowed it over the course of like a couple years. The day we opened the trailer, I had 28 cents in the bank. And then we were in the trailer for 1 year, almost to the day before we signed a lease on the building, and then it took 3 months to do the remodel of the building. And I was the contractor. I am currently the contractor for this current rebuild too. But then we opened up that restaurant for less than $12,000. So like we had a lot of elbow grease in that place. Like, we built the cookers, I customized the warmers. I've even made butcher blocks by hand. I'm a pretty hardcore do-it-yourselfer, as is Stacy, my wife. And so yeah, I mean, that has a lot to do with it. I mean, it's like, kind of goes back to, playing music. It's like, man, I don't want to like be on this huge major label. Like, I'd rather be on this other little label and do what we want to do. So yeah, I mean, if we don't sell out and we don't, have partners and it's just Stacy and I that own the place, we only have the one location, it's our decision. We can do whatever we want. We could shut it down tomorrow if we want. Oh, it's already closed right now. Right? But we could not reopen. We can do anything we want. Nobody can really tell us like, ooh, I think that sauce is a bad idea. Like, whatever, it's our place.
To that, and I think also the same stuff with you kind of building up the location. How much of that played into trial and error and just kind of trying different things, both with your food and learning how to put in that sweat?
The food has been pretty much the same since we opened. I haven't changed the brisket recipe at all. All the side recipes are the same. The sauce recipes, yeah, I guess we've kind of tweaked some stuff here and there, but it's pretty much exactly the way it was the first day I opened, except for the pork ribs. It took me about 6 months to figure those out. But they've been the same forever too. But yeah, I mean, we built the building. It's interesting because it has changed a lot. And it has been a lot of trial and error, but it's also because we opened up so cheaply that I couldn't afford real plywood for the shelf, so I used particle board. It's like, well, this will last a year, and then we'll go back and fix it when we can. So I've been backtracking a lot, going and fixing other stuff, but also we've gotten so much busier. When we opened up the trailer, I was cooking 2 briskets a day during the week, and then 3 briskets on Saturday and Sunday. And that was pretty much, if one of them sucked, I still had 2 or 1 that was hopefully pretty good. Like, it kind of increased my chances for a successful cook. And now we do 120 a day. So just to show how much busier we are now than when we were then, you know, when we opened up the trailer, I did a little spreadsheet. I was telling a buddy of mine, which is now the general manager of the restaurant, it's like, well, if I feed 15 people a day, I think this thing will stay afloat. Only 15. But it was also designed for 1 person to operate it, and then Stacy helped on the weekends, because she kept her job to pay the bills. But yeah, so it's gotten so much busier that the trial and error part is like, oh man, now we have to cook this much food. Ooh, we need another cooker. Oh, we gotta find a place for this. Ooh, we need another walk-in cooler. We need this, we need that. I mean, even now I'm still changing stuff. I'm like relocating an ice machine today and, you know, doing a bunch of electrical work at the restaurant. So it's constantly evolving.
So I mean, you started from the trailer and then you made that move to brick and mortar. Would you ever bring back a trailer version, or would you just kind of keep? Because
no, and that kind of also goes into why we wouldn't expand. Okay. Also, so one of the problems with the expansion and adding a trailer, we do have a to-go trailer behind the restaurant, and that's for the pre-order stuff. It'll open again soon too. But yeah, if we did more, go to ACL and do food or whatever. The problem is there's not enough food. Like, I'm buying 45,000 pounds of brisket a month, and I'm buying 100% of the European spec all natural. I'm buying 91% of prime all natural. So yeah, there's not enough cows to be had.
So how does that work?
Of what we cook, there's plenty of commodity meat out there, but the stuff that we cook, you know, there are only so many cows. So.
And so, how do you guys compete with the other barbecue places? Obviously, it's huge in Texas and other places. How do you compete with them on that?
You know, I've got some pretty sweet deals for meat stuff.
There you go.
I'm the only guy. I mean, really, like for the EU stuff that we use. So we use all prime, Angus brisket. You know, they don't have growth hormones or any of that stuff. They may or may not have antibiotics. Everybody gets sick. It's not that big of a deal. The growth hormones, I'm really against that stuff. But yeah, I'm buying so much of it, and I've got so many allotted. Like, okay, there are only 2 people in the country that are using the briskets that we use, and one person's got a pretty small share, and I've got a huge share of these things. So, you know, I went to Sweden 2 summers ago, I guess, and I had asked the guys to order the briskets that I use. I went and taught some classes, and the guy comes back and he goes, you know, through all these people and stuff. He's like, ah, man, we can't get them. We can't get the European. This is in Sweden. We can't get the European briskets. Some guy in Texas, they're telling me, has dibs on all that brisket, and it's a lot. I mean, it's like, you know, several thousand a month, you know, that are spoken for. But I was like, yeah, that's me. It's okay. Only 2 cases get on. But that's, I mean, you know, but it's taken 8 years to get to that point.
What was it that got you there? Was it reputation? Was it you just need the right people, or what was it?
I think it started off with me. So when we opened up the trailer, I just bought the best meat that we could afford, which was 1 Angus brisket a day at Restaurant Depot, nothing too special. And then probably about a month into the trailer, when we could make enough money, and actually we're selling some stuff, then I switched to Myers All Natural, and because that was doing all natural stuff was pretty big priority. Did that, and then when we moved into the building, they couldn't supply enough, so then I found these other guys, and that they could, and they were really nice. We kind of hung out, so we've just been loyal to each other pretty much, and you know, and then I guess the reputation kind of started to pick up after I was using it. So we've kind of built it up together, I guess.
And so that kind of is a really good transition to what I wanted to talk about next. So differentiation in the restaurant industry, where a lot of people maybe see that as somewhat of a commodity. And in Texas, the biggest thing that, since I've been here, it's, you know, if you can survive for 6 months, you're probably a pretty good barbecue place. But is it just the meat, or what else do you think has allowed you to stand out amongst
Well,
legendary
so we need to look and see what the scene was like when we opened. When did anybody live here 8 years ago? So you remember there wasn't a lot of barbecue around. You know, there were only 3 places in town that I remember that used real fires. One of them was the Pit on Burnett. They still do. Ruby's and Sam's, Salt Lick uses ovens. And actually, I guess the place on 12th, whatchamacallit, whatever that place is. So 4 guys in town that are using real fires. So that, and you know, there wasn't like a scene for barbecue 8 years ago. They're like, oh, let's go to Pokey Joe's and get this. And Pokey Joe's is great and stuff, but that was kind of like the standard thing. Like this kind of 80s, like East Texas-y kind of just like scrape the bark off, no fat on it, really thinly sliced, probably not very tender, but put it on a bun and dump a bunch of sauce on it, it's pretty good. So that's kind of what we were up against when we opened. And at that point, you had to drive 45 minutes in any direction to go get pretty darn good barbecue, or just pretty good barbecue. You had to go to Luling, had to go to Lockhart, you had to go to Taylor. Snow's wasn't open yet, I don't think. And yeah, so you had to go to like the old school, like German Czech places. So that was pretty much our only thing when we opened. So there really wasn't any competition. And I guess we just got lucky by doing it pretty good.
So did you take anything from those first brisket recipes from anywhere else that you've been, or was it just you kind of?
No, I just said half salt and half pepper, and was like, well, this seems like a good starting point. And it's actually still what we do.
Yeah.
Except we add a little bit of pepper towards the bottom of the shaker. Ooh.
Is that the secret? So should people not be taking notes right now?
The salt's heavier, so you know,
Yeah.
eventually you just gotta add some.
Is that the European salt?
No, it's just straight North Scotia salt.
And we've also got a lot of people, so a couple people specifically in my class that are looking to break into the food and beverage industry. Any advice for some of those entrepreneurs out there that are looking to start?
Besides, don't do it.
Besides.
I think, so if you look around, like how many people are opening up restaurants? I mean, a gazillion restaurants open every year. I don't even know what the running number is for Austin this year so far, but it's pretty nuts. I mean, there's like, people are opening restaurants just to open restaurants. And you go in there like, oh, that bar's pretty, or these fixtures are nice, or this floor's nice, but the food is probably not super great. It's probably pretty good. You know, a lot of these places, they have, you know, a cocktail menu that's pretty great, but the things that are lacking are high quality ingredients and just like passionate food. Like there are very few restaurants in town that I can go to every single time and they just completely blow me away. Like less than 5, that's pretty sad. You know, and so if you're gonna open a place, don't skimp on, you know, the quality of the food. Don't be like, oh man, this place looks great, we're busy. Because it's not so much about the bar, it's not so much about that, you know, whoever, you know, the host is, it's not so much about, you know, what kind of flashy, you know, light fixtures you've got. It's really about the food. I mean, our place is a dump, but the food's pretty good. I built it. Gotta tell you. But you know, I mean, you go to Uchiko and the food is amazing every single time. Like, you know, the guest experience is perfect every single time. They're nice, they're knowledgeable, they're hospitable. You know, the food, the drinks are good. Yeah, sure, it's expensive, but it's worth it. I bet, you know, you could go there and dump $400 and leave and be like, man, do we have time to do that again? It's that good. Same thing with like Emerald Rye. Hopefully the same thing with our place. So I think that's the thing about, like, if you're gonna open a restaurant, you gotta really know what you're getting into. You know, you're gonna work, if you're doing it right, you're probably gonna work at least 100 hours a week. You're probably not gonna get paid very good. You may or may not be the guy that's cooking. You may or may not be the general manager. You may or may not be the bartender, but you gotta know how to do all that stuff. Like, you can't just be like, oh man, we're hiring this guy, we've got this consultant. That stuff doesn't jive. Like, you gotta know it, and you gotta really be good at it.
So is there